having come about through the results of the election. And we'll take questions. I think with the microphone will be easier for us.
Turn the lights on.
That is when it works though, right?
They both work great.
Oh, okay.
It's just like lighting it up.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
Well, thank you for being willing to jump in. Would you please introduce yourself, first of all?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ruta Jouniari. I just completed a run for County Commission District 2.
I'm Susan Chapman, a longtime citizen of the city of Sarasota.
And she's a former city commissioner.
I don't like to talk about that.
Okay. And I'm Kafi Benz, who's president of CONA right now. And I'd like to know what your first question is for this panel. Gotcha. Well, okay, we'll start off with single-member districts, okay? What do you think has been the political effect of that change? Would you go first?
Well, we don't know yet.
Well, I'll just go over what happened when we didn't have single-member districts, just so that you know, and Ron did a great recap of some of the results. Running countywide for county commission, we had to try to touch over 200,000 lives in this county, which physically is an impossibility. Hence, you have to raise a lot of money. Just some numbers, Wesley Beggs approximately raised $35,000 for running against Al Mayo, who raised $125,000. I raised $45,000 versus Christian Ziegler, who raised $85,000 to run the race. It does come down to numbers. It comes down to availability of how many people can actually run, because the numbers are intimidating, both financially, time-wise, every which way. So with single-member districts, I was a huge proponent while I was running to try to get as many people to vote for single-member districts as possible, just because also, even just for qualifying, as Ron mentioned, to gather over 3,000 petitions of clean petitions, it's very difficult. And my hat goes off to Lourdes Ramirez, who actually did get it by petition, and God bless her, she was at Walmart like every morning. It takes a lot of work. So I'm hoping with single-member districts that everyone, including people that come to CONA, will actually have a lot more input than perhaps just the developers. That's my hope.
There were changes in the city also that will be dictated by the election. Would you like to discuss that?
Well, the last time I was here, I kind of mentioned that, first of all, I was opposed to the change the date. And what the proponents said is that there will be larger numbers of people showing up at the general election. We who preferred the other system wanted our elections to be separate so that our election got the most attention at the time. It does cost about $120,000 each election. I don't think money in conducting an election, if your election is separate, is that critical of an issue overall. What we are concerned about, those of us who opposed it, were that even though there might be increased turnout, there will be less attention to the local issues. And so what will happen is that it's the same issue. It comes down to money and campaign money. And if there are more elections on the ballot, you will have to raise more money to get your issues out. Now, I ran for judge, and one of the things that happened when I ran for judge is they had a zillion candidates in the general election, and we were always last, and nobody knew anything about it. And it was really hard to get your message out of who you were, and that's what we're concerned about. Now, who supported this? They claim that it's people who just are interested in increased voter turnout. It's actually people who want the elected mayor. And I'm a big supporter of the city manager council form of government, and the elected mayor people are more interested in one person running things.
I can pipe into this regarding the position that CONA has on the change the date that occurred. The difficulty that we had during this election for president of being able to go down the ballot and hold meetings in order to educate the public, which is what we do. We bring the information to the neighborhoods about things that affect them and what they need to know in order to vote. And we had to make choices about who we would have at forums because of the limited number of dates that we have. You had to pick and choose what was important enough for the community, and you would have to literally eschew many issues that normally we would be digging into and trying to provide information for people. That's, to me, the most profound reason for keeping municipal elections separate from the general election date, because it enables your politics in your local situation is the most intense for you and the most important for you to be able to participate in and have your representatives understand what your views are. So that was the position that CONA took on that.
Well, and then the other issue, it's not just getting your message out, it's also people, the school board elections are separate elections. And I think one of the goals of that making a separate election is that the most interested people are the ones who actually come out to vote. It's not, I look at the constitutional amendments, and every one of them but one passed, and they all passed by virtually the same amount percentages of votes, and I wonder how many people knew what some of those amendments were about. And so every election, I think it's important to have, and I don't want to sound like a snob, but I think it's important to have educated voters who know who the candidates are and who study the issues.
Ron, I think you and I talked about this at one point, in that there were a large number of ballots that came in on the amendments that didn't have other elections voted on. Did you see staggering of voting, or do you even look at with drop-offs in order to analyze whether or not people voted on local issues or only on the amendments and the national?
I haven't looked at that yet for this election. You're talking about undervotes, where someone may vote in one or more races or contests or for issues, but they don't vote in every election. We always have that, so if you go look like on our website at the results, you'll see for every race that you have on the ballot, there is a different amount of people that vote in every one. Not everyone votes on everything on their ballot. Some people pick and choose. As far as are you asking if there was drop-off for the amendments? That I don't know, Kafi. I'd have to go look. There had to be some, I would assume. Whether there was a lot or not, I don't know. And then what constitutes a lot? I mean, defines a lot, because you're a lot, and Ruta's or Susan might be a different kind of number. But there is always a different amount of people that vote. Obviously, more people vote for U.S. Senate or governor than vote for maybe a judicial race, for example, as you said.
When we get to the point of initiating the voting as the city has dictated, will you prepare data that'll compare historical undercounts versus what's going on in the new voting system? Can you do that?
I can, if I get a request for information, certainly. Other people do the research or, look at our data that we have, again, because our website has a lot of data, or they get it from our office. We email demographic data to folks, the same information you had here tonight. You just have to manipulate the data to come up with what the numbers are, the statistics that you're looking for. But certainly, would I do that on my own? Not necessarily, because it's not something a supervisor that I'd be looking for. But I certainly can do it, and would be willing to do whatever someone asks me to do. But we will be having those elections then in that August-November cycle starting next year. So the commissioners that will be up at that time, the same staggered scheme, just like the county we talked about, will stay for the city. So the next people up would be coming up in 2020. They will just get extended terms of office.
Well, and then the other thing about the change the date is they only talked about the November election. And when Ron talks about turnout, the historic low turnout and the partisan turnout is different in the August election. And one of the reasons is that Democratic candidates traditionally have no opposition, and Republican candidates have opposition. So there are more Republicans voting in the August election. Well, with the city, the largest number of candidates, that you reduce the field of candidates in the August election. So you may not have, by the time there is greater turnout, you may not have the same range of choices that you wanted to have in the general election, because they will be eliminated.
So CONA exists to give neighborhoods a voice. What I'm hearing from Mr. Turner is that he wants to do in his office is to make voting more accessible and inclusive, and make the process easier and increase the numbers of people voting. And yet we had an amendment put forward by the county commissioners expressly to limit our participation and our ability to be heard. Can that in any way be reversed? What is the process that citizens would need to take to be able to mount an opposition to that? And anything else you want to talk about on that topic?
You want to go first?
Well, you have to get extra amounts of signatures now to get it reversed. It's going to be really hard.
You want to address that?
Well, I would give a caveat even for single-member districts, because I'm not going to put it past our current commission to actually try to eliminate single-member districts quickly, just because I don't think they like it. As far as taking away the citizens' voice, I think it was an outrage of what they did and how they worded it, because the average citizen didn't understand with the language being put forth that they were actually taking away their rights and having that voice. I commend Ron Turner always. I think he does a tremendous job truly as supervisor of elections. I wish our commission was as open and willing to want participation from its citizens. The only thing I can say is groups like CONA, you have to keep the pressure on. I know Sarah Chapman, she did a lot. Tomer Turlo, you're doing a lot. There's a lot of citizens that are working really hard to make a change for all citizens. just keep up the fight until we change commissioners and until we get some new blood. And we don't have to answer necessarily to the big money, but we have to answer to you. But please, again, be cautious for single-member districts, because I really think it's going to come down to another vote and they're going to take it off.
Now I'll really talk about what I'm not ashamed of. I was the president of my neighborhood. I was also the president of all neighborhoods in the city of Sarasota. And how do you get them to listen to you? That's our big problem. How do you get them to listen to you? When you turn out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people and they don't listen to you. I mean, today I'm kind of tired tonight because I spent all day on a big thing about the Lido Pavilion. And we had the whole city commission chambers packed with people in red t-shirts. And but the way we got them to listen to us was that we worked behind the scenes on the legal issues that made them not be able to resist FEMA. I mean, I think that you have to have a different strategy than just turning out people, because they don't listen to us anymore. I mean, they literally don't. So what happened today is we had hundreds and hundreds of people, and even it's now on social media they're talking, was it the numbers of people that got these people to back off? No, it was that we as citizens knew enough to bring in other jurisdiction enforcement issues that made them have to back off. And I have to say, we have to get extremely sophisticated because they don't listen to us.
Well, does anyone else have another question? I think that's a wrap, and we'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.